Lawnmowers are essential tools for summer yard care, and I want to make sure mine stays working right all season long. Whether I'm getting it out in the spring, getting heavy usage during the summer, or putting it away in the fall, these are the three things I do every year to keep it working like it should. Now, I have a John Deere mower, but this stuff is universal to all riding mowers, so whatever you have, keep these tips in mind. Oh, and everything I'm using in the video, I've got links for you in the description. If you need more information, I've always got you covered. One of the most common problems that pops up has to do with the battery, so let's start there. If your mower doesn't start in the spring and you didn't pull the battery or put a maintainer on it, that's probably the problem. I'm a big fan of C-Tech battery chargers, and I've got a bunch of them for all of my battery needs. They work well because I can leave it connected to the battery without worrying about overcharging or anything like that. As soon as the battery starts to go flat, the charger kicks on to keep it topped up. Oh, and they're idiot proof, which is good for a guy like me. You can touch the clamps together and it won't spark, and you can even hook it up backwards and it won't cook the battery. It'll just give you an air light that says you're a moron. I like that. If you need a quick jump start because your mower is out in the shed and you're trying to get it in the garage to work on it or something, a jump pack is way more convenient than jumper cables. Mine is fairly old school and it's pretty big and heavy, but the newer ones can be a lot smaller and easier to manage. When hooking up the clamps, my owner's manual recommends connecting the positive, that's the red one, to the positive terminal on the battery, but when it comes to grounding the negative, it suggests using the frame rather than the negative terminal of the battery itself. Now, I'm not the kind of guy to consult my owner's manual to figure out how to jump start my lawnmower, but maybe I should have because I totally fried a computer doing it the wrong way. And it cost me $100 for the new part plus hours of diagnosing the problem. I actually made a whole video about it right here. Sometimes your battery just needs to be replaced. They do get old. You can go to the dealer and empty your wallet, or you can get an aftermarket battery that's probably just as good and way cheaper. I'm using this battery from Marxon, and it's a universal fit that can work in almost any lawnmower. The terminal style is a little different, but that doesn't matter because I can still connect the leads just fine. It's actually quite a bit smaller and lighter than the OEM battery, so install was way easier because on my mower, access is pretty tight. If you're a big OEM guy, you can always go to the closest dealer. But honestly, this Marxon battery, it's smaller and lighter, and it costs about half as much. I'm not gonna pay the John Deere tax for this one. Tires can also be problematic throughout the year, and I've definitely come out to a completely flat tire in the springtime after winter. And I've been lazy enough to top up a slowly leaking tire right before I use the mower every week because I didn't want to deal with the problem. One way to fix this issue is to replace the tire itself, but that's expensive. If you want to see that process, I've got a video, but the tire itself was over $100. Carlisle Turfmaster. No big deal. There's a much cheaper way to fix a flat, and that's by adding an inner tube. Most tires are tubeless, and that means the tire itself is holding all the air pressure. This works great until the tire starts to age and get stiff and develop small cracks that eventually lead to slow leaks. By spraying this tire with soapy water, I can easily see where my slow leak is coming from, and as suspected, it's not a puncture or anything like that. It's just a small pinhole in the sidewall due to age. Now, for road use on cars, old tires are extremely dangerous, but that's okay because usually the tread wears out long before the tire ages out. But with lawnmowers, it's not like driving 5 miles an hour on grass once a week really wears down the tread. They just dry rot from old age. If my tread is still good, I'm more inclined to add an inner tube and call it a day. The tube is what will be holding the air pressure, and it'll work the same as a bicycle tire. And sizing of the tire will be stamped on the sidewall, so just get a matching tube and it'll fit great. I'm using a mini tire changer bolted to my bench, and I highly recommend having one of these if you're a DIY guy. They can save you a ton of time when it comes to breaking the bead and leveraging tires on and off. With the bead broken, I'm going to remove the valve stem by cutting it off. It won't be needed because the tube itself will have its own valve stem. I like to break the bead on both sides because it gives me a little bit more room to work, but technically you can do this by only releasing the one side. This is the tube, and I've already mentioned how to find the sizing on the side, but I want to talk valve stem for a second. There are different styles you can get, and the TR13 is fairly standard. The TR6 valve stem was recommended to me by a guy I work with, and the advantage with this is that it's threaded and has 2 nuts to help hold it in place. With the TR13 style, I recommend holding the valve stem in place with a vice grip while you're working the tube into position. During the first clip of me doing this, my tube must have gotten pinched or twisted or misaligned or something. I don't know, but after I got it into place, I inflated it, I seated the bead, I went to pull the vice grip off, and the valve stem slowly disappeared inside the wheel. Not good. That's never happened to me before, and there was nothing I could do at that point to get it out. Plus, it was already filled with air, so I had to junk it by puncturing it and then pull it out and buy a new tube. The TR6 valve stem prevents that from happening because it has the nuts to hold it into place. I'm an idiot, and hopefully that doesn't happen to you. By lubricating the tube with soapy water, I gently slide it into the wheel behind the tire and inflate it until the bead pops back into place. Reinstall the wheel, and it's very unlikely that that tire will ever go flat again. The third thing that I like to do is some light-duty general maintenance. For this, I like to get the pre-assembled kits because it's easy, and this one includes oil filter, NGK sparkulators, air filter assembly, and fuel filter. The oil change is easy enough, and I highly recommend one of these flexible funnels for working on small engines because the drain plug always seems to be off to the side, and being able to catch all the oil at any angle is great. Plus, they're super cheap. I'm using a John Deere official oil filter because it came with the kit, but any brand will work, and here's an example of a filter from Wix that's probably just as good. Fun fact, I have a Toyota Yaris that I use as a runner that actually uses the same size oil filter as my John Deere tractor. So either my car really sucks or my mower is really awesome. It's the car, it's terrible. Getting the old filter off is easy if you are the last person to have serviced it. You should be able to spin it off by hand, but there's tools like this socket-style wrench to get the tricky ones that were really torqued on there. A light coating of oil before the install of the new one ensures that the next time you do this, it'll come right off of there. The fuel filter is simple. Just make sure you install it the same way as the old one came off. The direction matters, and it's best to just do it the right way. The air filter and spark plugs just go on the same way as the old stuff comes off. All of this maintenance stuff is really pretty simple. It's just a matter of doing it. Greasing movable parts is oftentimes one of the most overlooked parts of maintenance, but it's super important. I'm definitely guilty of not keeping up on mine and letting it slide way more than I should. I'm using the official John Deere grease, but again, you can use pretty much anything generic and it'll be just fine. My grease gun is just a cheapie from Amazon, and my opinion is that grease guns are always leaky messes no matter what you spend, so go on the lower end and just keep things simple and store it in a plastic bag. If you have an owner's manual, it'll probably call out the various greasable parts. If you have an entry-level mower, you'll probably have less greasable parts than I do. And if you have a mower that's way nicer than what I have, you're probably going to have more greasable parts. Just look around for the grease zerk fittings and give them all a few good pumps. I think the spindles on the deck are the most important because they're constantly spinning, but also check the front suspension and steering areas too. Sharpening your mower blades is another massively overlooked area of lawnmower maintenance, and you can find out how to do it yourself for cheap right here. If you like this video, think about subscribing to the channel. I post awesome DIY home and lawn care content all the time. And hey, thanks for watching.